And what's his name? Judah David. So no pressure on him. You know, Judah David. I like that, man. That's a strong name right there. All right, great. Let us know when he gets here. Well, he's here. Is he here? Yay! All right, welcome Judah David. Get to work. We got a bunch of kingdom stuff to do. Don't be laying around. All right, maybe for a day or two. We'll let him rest for a day or two. That's probably a lot of work being born. Yeah. All right. Well, y'all, it's a great day today. If you probably saw all the stuff over there and we're wondering what in the world, but you know we've been talking about this for weeks. John and Carla Reinagel are here from Equip Mozambique in Mozambique, Africa, and we're just going to turn this thing over to them and take it away, guys. Can we welcome them?
Good morning, everybody. I am so excited to be here again with you guys. And oh my word, I was really blessed in worship as well. There have been so many things that we've gone through that, you know, songs like that have just really gotten us through the tough times. I'll praise you when I feel like it, and I'll praise you when I don't. There are a lot of times, I guarantee we don't feel like it. But, you know, it is so powerful to just keep praising through the good times, the bad times, the hard times, the easy times. He's always there, and he is always worthy. And so yeah, just really excited. I'm so grateful for you guys. Like, we know when we are going through hard times that you are praying for us, and we thank you so much. It means so much to us, and we see his answers to your prayers on a very regular basis, and so please keep them up. We need them. And so we'll go ahead and go through the slides here. I don't know, does somebody have the clicker or whatever? Next slide, please. Here we go. Yeah, so I just wanted to introduce you to our whole family. We're not all up here on the stage, but John and I will be celebrating our 18th wedding anniversary tomorrow. And so God actually called us to Mozambique on our honeymoon. And so we've been following wherever he calls us ever since. So, and then we've got our 3 kids, Kyron, who loves board games, Jeriel, who likes being bit by random wild animals, and then Eliza, who was actually born in Mozambique. So she has 2 passports, and she is so proud of it. And so, next slide, please. Okay, so last year, John was actually here without the rest of us. We did actually have a chance to travel. We could have all gotten out. But I felt really strongly that God wanted us to stay. And so he came here, and he was able to share with you guys last fall without me. And while he was here, this is what was happening in our country, in Mozambique. And so I just wanted to give a quick little update on that before I dive into our ministry updates. So Mozambique had a presidential election last year, just like here in the States. But ours was very, very hotly contested, and there were there's a lot of unrest and riots, and it really got awful. But God kept us safe through all of it. One of the main reasons that I wanted to stay, here if you go to the next slide, was another missionary that works with us. Her name is Katie, and she was pregnant. I love that you guys are celebrating this birth that literally just happened right now. But we were her only support there. Like, her family wasn't going to be able to come, so she's American, married to a Mozambican guy. And so I was like, I can't leave Katie, like 9 months pregnant, while John was having to come back here to the States. And so I, in the midst of all of the riots and the unrest, the government decided the best way to stop them would be to turn off all phone cell companies and internet providers so that no one can coordinate their next march or anything. And so in the middle of this total media blackout, like, Katie and I were having to figure out, like, how are you going to tell me when you're in labor? And how am I going to come pick you up and give you a ride to the hospital? And how am I going to go find the midwife out an hour out of town and bring her in? But God made it all possible. And little Dante was born perfectly healthy there in the Mozambican hospital. And he is a happy, healthy 6-month-old now. But yeah, God was just, he had us. And he had us in the palm of his hands. And it was really bad in the capital city. They called it a total war zone. Over 350 people died throughout all of these protests, mostly them doing peaceful marches and then the police just firing into them randomly. And so it was men, women, children, elderly, everybody. And it was fine for the most part in our city. It didn't get ugly until the day that I had to fly out with the older two kids. I had to leave Eliza behind with a friend and fly out with them to renew our visas. And that day, like, we flew out at 1 o'clock, and at 3 o'clock, as our plane touched down in South Africa, it erupted in our city, and there were over 35 people that died that day in our town alone. And it's just amazing for us to see how God was like, he had his hand just like always over us and on us. And then like when things were fine, we were there, and then if we had to leave, things would get bad. And it was just really crazy how he protected us through all of that. And so just, again, thank you guys for your prayers. We need them on a very regular basis, so please keep them up. Okay, go ahead and keep going. All right, so I know you guys who've been so faithfully following our journey over the years, you probably could point Mozambique out on a map, but in case you were struggling, that's where it is. And exciting update is we now share a little bit about Zimbabwe, because we established not just Equip Mozambique, but now we have Equip Zimbabwe, which is the country next door. And so we'll share a little bit more about that later on. But this is a size comparison to show you how big Mozambique and Zimbabwe are. Mozambique's about twice the size of California and has about the population of Texas, but the GDP of Springfield, Missouri. And so, like, the entire country's GDP is the same as one not too big city here in the States, just to give you some perspective. Go ahead, go to the next slide. So just like what that means, almost 2/3 of the population lives on less than $2.15 a day. That is a massive number of people that are just really struggling to survive. By comparison, in the States, only 11% are below your poverty line, and your poverty line is $41 a day. So that is a big difference even in what you consider to be poor. Next slide. This one is one that's kind of dear to our hearts, and something that we work really hard on is how many jobs are available. So let's say you have this many people on the screen, the two that actually get a job. So out of all the 500,000 people that enter the workforce every year, only about 18,000 jobs are added to the economy. And so that's how many people are actually going to get a job. We get to see this on a regular basis whenever we have an opening at our organization and we post the job. There's one time we had an unpaid internship position, and we got over 500 applications. People were just so desperate. And then for a minimum wage secretary position, we got 750 applications. It was just like, there's just so much desperation for something to sustain themselves. And it's just a tough context that we live in. Next slide, please. And so why are we there? We feel like God has called us to these people who are struggling so much. The king will say, I tell you the truth, when you did it for one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. And so we see Jesus in these people. We see Jesus in the least of these, like Louisa here in this picture, who was a student in our sewing school. We see so many opportunities to serve Jesus as we serve the community there that is in such great need. Next slide. Another verse that just really propels us, and I love how it ties into your church especially. So this is another way that we feel like God has called us. He says, I'm about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness, and I will create rivers in a dry wasteland. And so that is what we see God doing. Like, even though the situation looks absolutely impossible, he is making a way. He is making a pathway through that wilderness. He is making rivers through those deserts. And it is so exciting to get to partner with him as he does that. And then the next one. This one is very, near and dear to us is the concept of shalom, God's wholeness, his peace, and us being able to just lean into him and all he is. And he says, seek the shalom of the city where I took you as captives in exile. So no matter what your situation, even in the worst of situations, as a captive in exile, he says, pray to God for the wholeness and peace and joy of wherever you are. And so for you guys, that's here. Pray for the shalom of Waynesville. Pray for the shalom of Fort Leonard Wood. Pray for the shalom of your community here. Because where your surroundings have shalom, you will also have shalom. And so just pray to God. And so that is what we want to do in Mozambique, where he has called us. We are looking for we look at this broken nation and we see so much potential for God's wholeness there. And that is what we are called to bring. So any system that's broken, people that are broken, we just see as opportunities for him to create that pathway through the wilderness. Go ahead, next slide. So how do we do that? How do we do that? We have kind of workshopped this over the years that we've been there, but we finally decided this is what we want to call ourselves. We are a social innovation studio. What does that mean? We are focused on discipling Mozambican leaders into fulfilling what God has called them to do. We want them to have a focus, so with social, we want them to have a focus on their communities and not just themselves. Like there's a lot of people that they just want to get ahead for themselves, but we don't want to just work with them. We want those who say, you know what? My community needs Jesus. My community needs help. My community needs education. My community needs jobs. How can I help them get there? And then those are the people that we grab and we work with. With innovation, we are always looking for the creative pathways through the wilderness, because that does take a lot of creativity, because we have to do things that no one else has ever done before. And then what we call ourselves this studio, where we incubate these ideas and we help them step by step until they are ready to stand on their own. And so this is what we call ourselves. And so we have a ton of different projects that I'll talk about here in a second. But keep in mind, this, the reason why it is so widely varied is because of this. This is who we are. We find these people. Go ahead, next slide. We find these people. This is our team, our amazing team of Mozambicans. We have about 25 full-time employees. And then, you see me and John and Katie in there too. But we are empowering the next generation of Mozambican leaders, and they are going to be the ones who join with God to transform their nation. And so that is our calling, and that is what we do. And so go ahead. So we strongly believe that the kingdom is the solution to everything that is wrong with society, every nation, the whole world over. And so we want to see God working in poverty and health and justice, education, business, Bible distribution. These are all things that, he has brought people alongside us in our team to bring God's shalom, his wholeness. And so I'll share a little bit more about each one of these. Keep going through slides, please. And so, like I said, we've actually 11 years now. So last year we celebrated our 10th anniversary, and this is just a quick little timeline of our journey, but I don't have time to go into all of it. So go ahead and go to the next one. I want to zero in a bit and share some of the specific amazing leaders and their stories and what God has done in them. So Cecilia Delamani came from a northern province. She's actually not from our city, but she was brought to our city as a child bride, just in her early teens, to a much older man, which is unfortunately really common situation. Her family was absolutely destitute, and she was told her whole life, you are nothing, you will never amount to anything, you are worthless. And when she came and she was this, little teenager going to this, in this strange city that she, didn't know anybody, everyone just laughed at her, even at church, because she wore the same dress to church every single week, because that was just how poor she was. And she was just, when she came, somebody recommended her to our sewing school, and so she came and she joined us, and she was so broken and so withdrawn and so depressed all the time. But God worked in her in such amazing ways, as she was a student in our school, And it was just really beautiful to see him healing her from the inside out, watching as she developed her skills. She was coming with her little, 2-year-old toddler, and this toddler was like running all over the sewing room, like scribbling on the walls, and she'd be like, no, get this, and having to go and catch her and everything. And so her first sewing projects, trying to sew with a wiggly toddler on her lap, didn't turn out great. And so for a little while, we were like, is Cecilia ever going to actually learn how to turn out good quality stuff? But by the time she got to the end of the course, she was the best we had. So she was so determined, and she did such an amazing job that all of her stuff was top of the class, highest quality. In fact, we even asked her to come back then as a teacher in the school, because we saw so much, not just the sewing ability, but leadership potential in her. We saw that she had a heart to help others, and so she has been one of our main sewing teachers now for several years, and now those same ladies that laughed at her at church are asking her to make dresses for them. And so it is just so much fun to see how God took this broken woman, made her whole, and then turned her into an ambassador of hope to others. And so that is the kind of leaders that we work with. We don't find necessarily people who are already showing leadership potential or anything, but God can take anyone and do anything he wants with them. Next one I want to share with you on our sewing team. Go ahead, next. Oh, yeah, and then we just celebrated our 10th sewing graduation this past year. And so we've empowered over 120 women through this school over the years that we've been in operation. And at the graduation, we work it out to where, like, as they sew these products, like you see over here at our little stand, we turn the profits back to them in a savings account so that they can graduate with a sewing machine, so that they graduate with both the skills and the tools to start over life and to start a whole new life with hope and a chance to provide for their families. But even more than that, like, I love the smiles in this picture because these women have been healed. They know God as the Father who loves them. They have a healthy community of people who encourage them and build them up. And go ahead, next slide. We were invited to even bring our sewing project into the local jail, which was really exciting. I just went with a visitor who said, hey, I do jail ministry in America. Can I go visit the jail here? And as I was in there and explaining who I was and what I did, the guard at the jail was like, you do sewing classes? Can you do sewing classes in here? Because he really actually genuinely cared about the women who were incarcerated and wanted to see them have a better life when they left. And I was like, sure, we can figure out how to make this work. And so once every 2 weeks, I get to go into the prison for a couple hours, and I teach them just little things that they can sew with their hands, because we don't have sewing machines for them or anything, but some of the products that you see over here, some little keychains and coasters and things, those were all sewn by hand in the prison as a way of giving these women a hope and a future as well. And when they come out, if they live locally, we are able to bring them into the school as well. Next slide, please. Another thing that we've added is just cell groups for the graduates to be able to get together so that they can continue having that healthy community close to their homes and continue learning and growing and encouraging one another. And so that's been going really well also. Next slide, please. All right. So I think I missed one slide, but I really wanted to share this one story. Yes, there he is, Lucio. This is another member of our sewing team. It's just a really unexpected person. So Lucio grew up in a really rough neighborhood. Almost everybody in his neighborhood was doing drugs, and he was also fell victim to some deep addictions as well. His parents were big into witchcraft, and his life was just a dead-end road. But God got a hold of him. He gave his life to Christ, and he started coming to church, but then he came to his pastor and was like, I have nowhere to spend the rest of my week. I'm either surrounded by my drug addict friends or I'm surrounded by my witchcraft family. Like, I have nowhere to go. And the pastor said to him, well, there's a Quit Mozambique just down the road. How about you just go hang out at their office? And so that's what he did. He started coming and just hanging out with us. This guy just recently off drugs, just, God's still turning his life around. But he was like, hi, I'm here. What can I do? And so for a couple of months, he just volunteered full time. If our doors were open, he was there. And he was like, oh, look, this floor looks like it could be swept. Where's a broom? Let me sweep this floor. It's like, oh, look, these windows could be cleaned. Let me clean the windows. He started making lunch for us every day. He started learning computer skills with the tech team. We got a huge industrial embroidery machine donated to us. And he was like, can I learn how to use this? I want to be your embroidery person. And he did. And it's just been amazing to watch how God has turned him around, turned his life around. We were able to hire him after he volunteered for such a long time because we saw that God was working in him and he had this amazing work ethic. And now he has developed just such a passion for the sewing school, which is just so precious to me that, he comes as the only guy to our little sewing meetings, and he's just like, what can we do to get women out of poverty? Like, this is what keeps me up at night. And so I especially wanted to share his story because, the next time you see someone who is, deep in addictions and, at the bottom of the barrel of life, think about Lucio and think about what God could have for that person's future. He is, now this lifelong learner who just loves to learn new skills, he's very creative and wants to just empower other people. He knows what God has brought him from, and he wants to see God heal others. And so just don't give up on anybody because God has a plan for literally everyone if we can partner with him. So just one more little department I want to talk about. You can go back to the library slide. So in 2017, we were able to start a community library with an awesome donation of our first donation of books. And it has become the most amazing community hub in our neighborhood. We moved it. Actually, Chris, who's here visiting, was with us when we moved it 2 years ago to its current building. And it was this wild experience of just throwing a bunch of loose books into a truck and then piling them in a mountain on the floor and trying to put them back in order. But it is so hard to find learning resources. Like even the schools don't have the textbooks that they need for the kids to study. And so we have the full set of the national curriculum of textbooks. This place is packed out almost every single day. There's, over 100, 200, 300 kids sometimes a day coming through those doors, coming to learn, because it's a safe place. We always want to provide a safe place for people to come, to grow, and we see, them becoming these great leaders in the community as they're influencing their friends, hey, come on, we need to do better in school if we want a future. And it's been really exciting. We recently started adding Friday game day. And so we bring out all these board games and educational toys and Rubik's Cubes and stuff that Kyron gets to have fun with them. And it's just really exciting to provide this space where people can flourish and thrive and experience a little bit of the wholeness that God has called them to. And they can get that little taste and go further with it. Selena, the librarian, even started taking some of the books with us when we'd go do the jail ministry with the sewing. She was like, hey, these people have a lot of time on their hands. I wonder if they would like to read. And sure enough, lives are turning around left and right in the jail. They've started these little small group reading groups there in the jail, and then she'll come back every 2 weeks and swap out their books. And some people have said, I had no hope for my future before, but now I have a hope. God got a hold of them through these books that they've been able to read in jail. And even though their time that they're allowed to have ministry, people come in is very limited, but book time is unlimited. And so that has been an amazing way that God is reaching people through our library. And so it's just been really exciting to see how he has worked in all those ways. All right, next slide, I think, yes, starts John's part. So I'm going to hand it over.
Thank you. Isn't she awesome? Yeah. So we're very much co-ministers in all of this. So we work a lot together in everything, and it's a true joy for us, to minister together. And I get to kind of start with the Juris, the Law and Rights kind of app and system that we're growing and developing. So a couple years ago, I shared a little bit with the church on this one. And when you've got really, really poor people, one of the best things you can do for them is teach them their own rights. There are actually rights, constitutional or enshrined country rights for people that they're not taking advantage of. And so that's what this whole system does. We teach people how to fight back if somebody's trying to take their land. Or if after your husband dies, how do you make sure that the bank gives you the money that is actually rightfully yours? How do you make sure that you can protect and stay in your home? These are the situations that really common occurrences in Mozambique, and it just leads to desperate poverty. And so we developed an app. There's over 30,000 people that are using the app. And then other people kind of got a hold of this. We've got a radio station that does a law and rights campaign. So they've got a lawyer on, and once a week they have an hour where they talk through a law of the Mozambican law and help people understand what their rights are. We also work in communities. So we've got a partnership with a group called Mercy Air that flies us out to. They've got a helicopter. We don't have a helicopter, but they get to fly us out to various districts, and we meet with the pastors and the local administrator to say what are the biggest needs of your community, and we'll come in and we'll bring a team and help your people be aware of them. Sometimes we've got Chinese companies that are coming in and trying to take land. Other times it's real destitute poverty that's caused by polygamy. So sometimes in different communities it's normal to have 3 or 4 women. And you start marrying them as young as like 13 or 14. And you can kind of see how that causes major poverty, and there's way more women in our sewing program in a number of years because of it. So we go and we fight against that. Yeah, so you've got a picture of Adamo here. He was actually part of a polygamous family. He was one of 53 kids. And he came in wanting to make a difference. He was like, I don't want everybody to live in the same kind of poverty that I was in. Because 53 kids, and you had one guy that was trying to provide for all of them. Right? It was a bit of a recipe for disaster there. And so it was, I think there were 4 different women in this situation. And so he has a real heart to help women and to help girls not get married, before their time, before they've graduated from high school. That's kind of our goal, is to make sure that they're educated before they get married off. And the pastors are really excited about this as well. So they're our number one kind of supporters in this. And the local government has kind of mandates from on high, from the national government, that you need to stop the polygamous marriages. And they have no idea how to. That's where we come in. So we come in and we help them understand how to stop it. We can't really stop marriages that have already happened, but we do help them understand why not to let their kids get involved in that. Why to say no if a 50-year-old guy approaches your 13-year-old girl and wants to marry them. So sadly, we have to have that conversation on a regular basis. Yeah. So next slide. We are also doing a lot. This was a really fun testimony from last year. So we had a lady from our board of directors whose salvation story actually came from her time in politics in St. Louis. And so she got involved in corruption in St. Louis. There's a huge scandal, and she found the Lord through that. When our team found out about that testimony, they're like, well, we've got to get everybody in our city together. And so we had an opportunity for her to share this testimony with over 50 people from the local government. Right? So it was such a powerful testimony. She got to share not just our anti-corruption message, but the testimony of how Jesus turned her life around to all of those different people. So, yeah, we were super excited about that. So next slide. Wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing on the Bible side. So I talked about Joao a little bit the last time I was here. So last time I was here, it was without the family. And he was the one where I showed the wedding video, right? Whereas his wife wrote him a song, right? And they're singing, she's singing to him. And he just really got a passion for not just what we did, but how to do it. And so he had a gift for programming, but he didn't realize that that could be used for the gospel or for his own community. He thought he would be programming for a bank or an insurance firm or something else like that, and then the rest of his time would be given to the Lord. But I asked him, well, could it be that God's actually asking you to make technology to get the word of God out to your own people? So we've been working with him and a couple other people from our team, and they've been able to develop an audio Bible app. We've had the audio Bible app. They've been able to put it on WhatsApp. And about 3.5 million people in Mozambique have access to smartphones. And 4.5 million have access to WhatsApp. So we're getting the Bible to 1 million more people through this. And we just launched it a couple weeks ago. There's been a lot of excitement through our church partners in this, especially in the northern area of Mozambique. We've never actually lived in the northern area, but it's a lot more kind of Muslim. And the churches there feel really alone. And some of the pastors that I've talked to recently have never actually heard the Bible in their own language up until they got this on their phone. So yeah, for me, the biggest testimony isn't just people hearing the word of God for the first time, but it's Mozambicans that are getting the vision from God on how to impact their own society. So it's really incredible to see kind of where that's gone and where it's going. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so that's a little bit more on the audio Bibles. We've got the audio Bible launched in 20 languages in Mozambique right now. It's just the New Testament. We're still programming the Old Testament. And we're actually in conversation with right now 5 other countries to see if they could use this same technology. So we're really excited about possibly exporting something that has been done in Mozambique. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so just how to get involved. Please be praying for us. That's our number one ask for everybody. Last time I was here, it was me, right? And it was in the middle of a testimony. I was here. I couldn't get back to Mozambique. The family couldn't leave Mozambique, and so we were kind of in this really stressful situation. And as Carla shared, God protected us through the whole thing. But sometimes it is not easy. We really kind of we covet your prayers. That's the number one thing we ask for. Also, we have a newsletter, and so please visit our desk over there. We've got a table that has different products, and you can sign up for our newsletter, and you can also donate to the ministry as well. So next slide. I wanted to talk a little bit today about Peter's call. So this is something that has really kind of impacted me in this very difficult situation in our life. So Peter has 3 times where Jesus called him out of the boat. The first time was at the beginning of his ministry. And at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, Peter was there in his boat, and Jesus said, leave your nets, leave your boat, and follow me. I'm going to make you a fisher of men. I'm going to make you fishers of men, right? So there's multiple people he was calling. He was calling Peter. And for me, that the first call was exciting. It was new. I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I signed up to follow Jesus. Right? And I think that's what Peter went through. He's like, oh, this is really cool. I'm going to be following. The second time there was even more emotion actually. So it's in the middle of a storm, and Jesus walks on water out to the boat, and Peter is like, wow, this is really cool. Lord, ask, can I come to you, right? And then Jesus says, come out of the boat. So he leaves his place of safety and security, and he walks on water with Jesus for a little bit, right? And then he starts to falter. But there was an excitement with it, and sometimes we can get really involved. We can hear testimonies and say, yes, this is what I want in my life. I want this, and we're begging God, move faster in my life, right? Move faster. I want to do those things. That's kind of the second call that happens with Peter. And then we've got the third call. This one happens in very different circumstances. So Peter's life is, at least expressed in the Gospels, happens a lot in threes. And there are 3 disasters that happens in Peter's life right before this. So the first disaster, he says something to Jesus, and he says, Lord, you don't have to be crucified. Let that never happen to you. And Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. right? It's a very strong rebuke, right? I don't know if you've ever been called Satan by God himself before. That's pretty bad. And so he just messed up really badly. The second time he took a sword, right? So Jesus said, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. He's talking pretty much metaphorically, but Peter takes this literally, so he misunderstands the words of Jesus, and he takes a sword, and as Jesus is being arrested, he cuts off the ear of Malchus, the servant of the high priest, right? And then Jesus rebukes him again. No, not like that, right? And then the worst thing happens, right? So he says, Jesus tells him, "You're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows." And so 3 times in a row, he denied that he was a disciple of Jesus. And in the middle of this, so this happens. Jesus is crucified. He's resurrected, and Peter goes back to fishing, right? He's back in the boat because that's what he knows. That's his comfort zone. That's his ministry. Not his ministry, rather, but that's his job, right? That's his profession, and that's where he's comfortable. And he's probably there thinking, I messed up. I don't have what it takes to actually lead these people like Jesus asked me to. And so this story right here is in this area. And we know what happens next in Acts. There's an incredible anointing that happens happens on Peter. 3,000 people are saved in a single day. Sometimes his shadow heals people. He breaks out of prisons, and so he becomes this extremely anointed person. But in the middle, there's this conversation, and the third call. So I wanted to just kind of pick up here at the third time that Jesus asks him. So it says, after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," Peter replied. "You know I love you." "Then feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know I love you." "Then take care of my sheep." A third time he asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt that Jesus asked him the question a third time. He said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep. I tell you the truth. When you were young, you were able to do as you liked. You dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted to go. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go." Jesus said this to let him know by what kind of death he would glorify God. Then Jesus told him, "Follow me." So the next slide. There's a couple things I really want to point out. There have been places that we've been taken where we haven't wanted to go, right? And when you say yes to God, there is the power, there is the testimony, there are the lives that are being changed and transformed. But there's also the scary, right? There are the terrifying times when God's asking you to do something that you don't want to do. When he's asking you to minister to somebody or forgive somebody that you don't want to forgive, right? He's asking you to do things that you that are a bridge too far for you. And in this call, Jesus does that. He asks Peter to go places where he doesn't want to go, right? So this call, unlike the first two, it includes a pain, and includes a suffering, and includes a way that he has to die to himself. And I think many of us, like this is the continual call for us. We've said yes, we've said yes in excitement, and oftentimes we have to say yes in the pain when we know what it'll cost us. After a couple years of following the Lord, you know what he's asking you to do. You know what he's asking you to give up, and sometimes it's hard. It's very hard. And that's what Jesus asked of Peter, right? One of the other things that he said was he called him to the mundane. He called him to feed his sheep, right? So the call was feed my sheep, right? That's a daily thing. You've got to keep feeding the sheep, or they're going to go hungry. And it was pretty much the most thankless task in ancient Israel, was being a pastor or a shepherd. And so that was the call to Peter. Do this. Be faithful in the mundane. right? We have to do things, the mundane, the rhythm, and oftentimes God calls us to those things. Now, we know what happens even in a few days, right, where people start to come in the thousands to the church. But the call is in the faithfulness. The call is in the small things, right? And we have to do that when we're following the Lord. And there's also a repeated call. So for those of you who have been following the Lord for a while, I think you're probably going to understand this, right? Jesus had to ask him 3 times to follow. And sometimes God asks us many times, before we actually do what he's asked us to do. Sometimes, if we're not careful, we can wait on, we think we're waiting on the Lord for decades, but he's actually been waiting on us, right? He's been waiting on us to say yes. And it's because we're asking him one thing, and every time in prayer, he's like, well, did you do this? Did you forgive? Did you tell this person about Jesus? There's that next step that he's asking us for, right? He is asking us for this raw obedience. And so oftentimes that is the call that God can have on our lives. I really loved this morning when we came up. You had the kids message here, and I don't think I've ever been hit so much by a kid's message. You had the kids' Bibles, the VBS, trusting Jesus in a wild world, right? And so much that is what we do. We trust Jesus in a wild world. And he is faithful. He's always been faithful, and he will still continue to be faithful. I think that that's the number one message that Carla and I have, is that God has been faithful in our lives. And I think number 2 is it's not all about victories. There's a lot of pain, that ends up happening. In the last year, we've went to Zimbabwe. We were supposed to be there for the start of Equip Zimbabwe. Like what we were sharing with you guys about, and we got stuck for 11 hours at the border. We got stuck there, and we got threatened to be arrested. It was just a very difficult time for us. We were never able to get in, and we had to go back. And because our visas had expired in Mozambique as well, we had to fly back in a couple days, just from that. And I was asking, well, Lord, what are you doing? What are you doing here in this? And this is a very unusual thing for us because we've walked into situations where they've said you don't have the visa, you can't get in, and we've walked out with the appropriate visa. We've been able to get into a country that has told us we weren't allowed. But this time it was different. We had the visas and they denied us. And so we were just wondering, Lord, where are you in this? Right? And sometimes you will be led to places you don't want to go, but God is still in there, right? I get back to my team, and I shared with you some of my favorite testimonies from this year. That ended up being my team's favorite testimony. They're like, man, you guys were there for 11 hours and you didn't pay a single bribe. And we're like, yeah, but we're really discouraged and nothing happened. And they're like, we didn't know you were so serious about anti-corruption until now. And everybody on the anti-corruption team was like, they just recommitted to the call. They're like, okay, if you're going to go that far for it, then we are too. So, that meant that we had to leave Zimbabwe. We couldn't go to the opening ceremony there. We had to leave Mozambique a little bit early and come back to the States. But that was my team's favorite testimony, even if it was my least favorite. So. Yeah, thank you for clapping at that one. My kids' probably favorite one was we had to go to Malawi last year, and we got pulled over. It was almost 50 times in 3 days by the police, and it was just unreal how many times we had just different situations, but God got us out of each of them in different ways. These are, the life is exactly like what Peter experienced, right? He's got these incredible testimonies of breaking out of jail, but he's also got pain, right? He's got situations where it didn't work out the way he thought it would. And I think that's the major lesson I wanted to leave you guys with, that God calls us in the pain, right? He doesn't need he doesn't need whole vessels. I think most of us wanted to give him something whole and real. And after following for a while, we've been broken. There have been things that have gone not right in our life. But God doesn't need a whole vessel, right? He can use a willing, broken vessel. So wherever you're at in life, God can use you, right? God can use you in that. So if Jesus had this call for Peter, he absolutely does for us today. I'm going to just ask Pastor Howard to come up and see what the Lord wants to do from here.
Thank you. Yeah. I hope you're encouraged by that. And you think about, I had to wait in line for 20 minutes at the Walmarts the other day, but it wasn't 11 hours. And the Pulaski County Sheriff didn't pull you over 50 times, right? That's a lot of times. I'm a retired cop, and I'm like, how in the world, what did they even find to pull you over for? I don't know. That's crazy. Yeah, as far as we know. We're so encouraged every time you guys come. And I think back to when you guys were first telling us about, we're going to start a library. Do you remember that? I think the first time you guys ever came, you just had these little seeds that God had planted in you. And now you're up here talking about all these lives that have been changed and how God has moved and these programs that have been established in your country. And y'all, this is where we come in, is that we give money to them every month, and we pray for them every month. And like they said, and this is kind of a cliche thing in the church, prayer is the most important thing, but it really is. It really is, because our prayers move God, Not that we're trying to talk him into doing anything. He wants to do it, but he wants the communication between us, and he wants to know that we're in faith, and the way he knows we're in faith is what comes out of our mouth, right? So we take these things to him, and we lay it at his feet, and we say, okay, God, this is bigger than me, but I'm trusting you. It's come down to this. We got to trust God, right? But he always shows up, doesn't he? He always shows up, and thank you for, those are some awesome testimonies. And did you notice the one, I always love the ones, but the drug addict who started sweeping the floor. And now look at this young man and how God's turned his life around. Y'all, sometimes we got to be willing to just sweep the floor, right? Some of us, we get this idea in our mind that success in ministry is this kind of thing, right? But some of the best times Melanie and I ever had in ministry was greeting people at the front door when they came in, or working in the prayer rooms after service. Things that are out of sight, out of mind, that nobody thinks about, but it's just serving God and putting your heart into it and being faithful. And when you're faithful, he's going to be faithful. Yes? Yeah, he's got a plan for each and every one of us. There's none of us that's not important. None of us. Yeah, and you just saw that in some of those testimonies right there, yeah? Amazing. I love the part about now was that the lady in the green dress was the one that got busted for corruption in America, but then she went and said, you would think, okay, her life's over, right? A public figure, taken down. But then look, God turned her right around and said, watch, I'm going to use you to influence the nations. Through the mistakes that you made, through the wrong choices that you made, I can still take that. Listen, he can take the mess you've made and make something good out of it.